y'all. I want to welcome you to the Blueprints and Blessings podcast, the podcast where we talk purpose, real estate, and the power of faith to turn your foundation into a future. I'm your host, Dabrielle Goodwin, also known as the Builder Bae, a real estate developer, entrepreneur, and a woman of God on a mission to build more than just buildings. As the founder of Alluvial Enterprise, Inc., I've helped lead over $60 million in real estate transactions, and I'm currently working on projects that total more than $34 million. But let me be clear, I did not start this podcast to brag about my real estate portfolio. Why? Because it did not start with $1 million deals. It started with one step, one trailer, and one open heart. So whether you are called to build a business, a family, or a new chapter, or you're just trying to figure out what's next, you're in the right place. Because every blueprint starts with a blessing attached to it. And today I'm sharing with you how mine began. So guys, we're going to take it back to 2009, all the way back. I am 17. I'm fresh out of high school, just graduated, and I had big dreams. I had got accepted into the University of Alabama. I applied to 12 schools. I got into 9 and basically begged my parents to let me attend wherever came out of a hat. I had a full ride to every Florida school through Bright Futures, but I just was not interested in attending a Florida school. So I'm like, hey, let me put the schools in a hat and whatever comes out, that's where I'll go. We will let fate decide. And we did just that. So the University of Alabama came out. My parents were just as shocked as I was because I'd never been to the state of Alabama. And at the time, you know, my friends, there was this video going on of who all see leprechauns? Say yeah, yeah. And it's like a leprechaun in Mobile. And they're like, are you sure that this is where you want to go? These people are wild. And I'm like, I love it. It's my level of wild. They got leprechauns, you know, I'm going. So that summer before I head off to Alabama, I just wanted to chill with my friends. I wanted to party, turn up, just kind of kick it. I had no real direction. I just wanted to relax. But for whatever reason, y'all, my mom, she was hating on my greatness, truly hating on it. She did not want me to do that, nor did she allow that to happen. She signed us up for a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar, and they have a 2-for-1 special, you know, 2 spots for the price of 1. And at this time, you know, she's working. She's a full-time job. She's working. So I'm like, how you going to sign up for a course? And she's like, you're actually going and you're going to take notes on my behalf. And I'm, you know, looking at her boggle like, what? And she's like, yeah, you're going to this Rich Dad, Poor Dad Robert Kiyosaki course and you will take notes. And at first I was a little salty because it really felt like a chore, but that chore slowly turned out to be divine assignment. So the seminar started, you know, I'm enrolled in the course. And she's dropping me off. I'm showing up. And the first few weeks were so dull. They focused on flipping, wholesaling, rentals, new construction. I mean, it all felt interesting, but it was all so far out of reach. I mean, they're saying, oh, you need 20,000 to get started, 50,000, like all of this capital that you needed to get started that I just didn't have. They say, oh, you can borrow from family and friends, like just things that were so far-fetched. I'm like, yo, I'm 17. I have no money. My family and friends don't have any money. They don't even own a home. You know, everybody's basically renters. So, you know, hey, my mom owns a home. But at that time, I had a mom and an aunt. So I'm like, we're here. This family wealth that I can tap into, it doesn't really exist. So as the course, you know, just ran on, there was something a few weeks in that shifted and really caught all of my attention. And that was how to generate income from single wide trailers, because you didn't need to have a real estate license. A single wide trailer counts as a automobile and not real property, where a double wide trailer counts as real property. And with a single wide trailer, you can sell and transfer title at the DMV the same way that you do a car. So what that means is that if you are 17, 16, basically old enough to have a driver's license, then you could legally do deals. And this was pivotal because I'm like, okay, cool. I finally found a niche that I can target. So after going through the course, they basically walked you through exactly what to do. And I started out at Craigslist. So I made these ads that said, we offer rent to own housing. If you're looking for rent to own housing, we have housing available. You can make a deposit of $1,000 to $1,500. You pay anywhere from $850 to $1,050 a month. And in 3 years, you can own the property. At the same time, I also started a second ad campaign that says, we buy trailers cash, letting people know that basically we would offer them cash for their trailers. They just need to reach out and we could discuss the terms. So after doing both of those two campaigns, I wrote handwritten letters and to trailer park owners. So went to multiple trailer park communities in the Jacksonville area and really found ones that looked like they were vacant, abandoned, really unused, and wrote letters to these homeowners basically saying, hey, I'm looking at your property. I am looking for a place to stay, and I would really be interested if you would consider doing a rent to own option to where I will give you $500, as an initial deposit with $350 a month for the next 3 years. And then I sent them over the draft contract clause. Here's the contract that I anticipate on using. But in 3 years, once I've made payments, then I would be able to transfer or assign, which means that I could put it in another person's name as I see fit, the title once those terms in that contract have been fulfilled. So at that time, it was a lot easier than I thought to just have the conversation with both the homeowners and the tenants. And I got 4 people who said yes. And just like that, I had my first real estate portfolio before I had even stepped foot on a college campus. I had matched the trailers with the tenants, collected the deposits, the rent, and basically created enough cash flow for that 3-year period while I was in school to help service some of the debt. And it was needed because with me, going out of state, my parents made it very clear going in, like, hey, we can't afford 4 years out of state of Alabama. We can really only afford 3. So you better make it happen. And I was able to finish in the 3 years. I also never felt short. I always had money for books, hair appointment, food covered. I was always, taken care of. And at that time, I had no clue that God was planting a far larger seed. So, I am at the University of Alabama. I am a first generation college student. And I remember, I'm trying to find my footing. I'm not really focused on real estate at the time because I have my cash flow coming in and that's good. And there's not a lot of trailer park communities that are near Tuscaloosa. So it just wasn't my priority at the time as a student. I joined a ton of student organizations and I wanted to get involved. Coming into college, I just felt that, how you are in college is going to be a reflection of how you are in the real world. If you can't lead your peers and you can't guide, then you're not going to be a leader in the real world. Like, it's literally kind of your mini test to be able to see where you'll fall at in the real world. So I knew once I got into college, like, I wanted to be involved with everything. I got a partial, like I said, lacrosse scholarship, worked so many student organizations, president, VP, student leadership, just as many things that I could get involved with. And then my last 2 years, I worked 30 hours at the courthouse, not necessarily for the money, but more so for the experience to be able to say, hey, I'm going in to be a future lawyer. I just knew pre-law was what I wanted to do. It was the path that I was destined. And I think was so interesting though, because in hindsight, I knew I wanted to do pre-law, but I knew I had just experienced the cash flow from the trailers in the container, the trailers and renting those out, but it never occurred to me that that was an actual viable career. I think throughout my entire time in college, real estate was never a career option that even stood out in the forefront. It was just something I kind of did in the back skirt for cash flow. Was never something that led at the forefront. It was something I was good at, but just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're graced for it. So I lately or later on saw that with my time at the courthouse. I was good at the courthouse and just I felt like being a support to the very attorneys there and just really picking up quick and helping them kind of talk through things. But again, it just wasn't a fit. So I focused on kind of pivoting and redirecting my major early on to marketing and advertising with a focus on public relations and kind of never looked back. And like I said, everything happens for a reason because, guys, how it all ties in, and I'll wrap this so we see how it all ties in. God really does order our steps even when we don't realize it. But before I'll go into how it all ties in, I want to talk about before me leaving, the University of Alabama. So it was a year before I graduated and I made the decision to get baptized. Now, this will be a pivotal moment in some of the later podcast episodes because this baptism would literally prepare me for spiritual warfare as I enter just to try to do business in the district in ways that y'all are wild. They are wild. And we will get into some of those stories just about, things that I've had to deal with and overcome in the space in the warfare. But it was a year before I graduated that I made the choice to get baptized. And I remember walking into the church and Pastor Chris at Church of the Highlands, he was like, hey, a baptism is something that you do when you're called to do it. It's not something you need to plan and do all this whole flashy giddy up. When you feel like you're called to return and serve the Lord and it's on your spirit and you're ready to be cleansed so you can accept him, then come forward. And in that moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm ready. Like, I feel like I kind of have to because I got a year left before I graduate. This next season is going to be crazy. I don't know what it means, but I know I can't carry on anything that was weighing me down from the past. I know I need to go through a rebirth, but I didn't even know what that really meant. I just know I needed a fresh cleanse before I entered into a new season. That's how I kind of looked at it. But I remember just coming from up under that water as I came up, all I could do was just break down in tears because it felt like every weight on my shoulders had just been like lifted. I finally felt free. I finally felt a sense of like peace and comfort that I had never felt before. And I would need that, like I said, into this next season, preparing to graduate. So I finished in December 2012, made it through my 3 years, crossing the marathon. And I will say it tested every ounce of faith that I had, especially for the first month. I was job hunting like crazy. But prior to even graduating, I had been applying to like 10, like tons of jobs, just like on a daily basis, like overkill on applying to jobs. And as a somewhat, and I hate to say like semi, and I've worked on this as I've just grown more wiser, perfectionist, control freak, it burdened me the fact that I hadn't had anything, that I had left and graduated without an offer in hand. It literally sent me into a mini spiral for that first month. And then I get a call. I get a call from a government contracting agency in Washington, D.C., and they offer me a job as a marketing communications manager. Now, the job is in their installation management and real property division. They sent over a lot of acronyms, a lot. I mean, everything was an acronym. It was just a lot. It sounded like I was going to work in an engineering and kind of communications role, not really like a marketing role. Because even as they're telling me about the job description, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. But I'm like, I have no clue what they're talking about. They're speaking a whole foreign language. They said like literally ISR. They've given me like 10 different acronyms and DOD. I'm like, this. I hear them. Absolutely. Don't know what any of it means. But when they came around to the pay, they said, we're going to give an annual salary of $70K a year and a relocation stipend of $5,000. And at that point, everything they were talking about just went in one ear. Listen, I'll figure it out. I am that savvy, guys. I will figure it out. Listen, relocate me and I'll learn it. I'll learn all those acronyms. I learned all of it. Listen, I was determined to figure it out. And you know what? I just did just that. I packed my bags. I had $200 in my pocket and I up and moved to DC on faith. And I'll never forget, it was the end of January of 2013, moving to DC. And this is my first winter in DC. I didn't have a real coat, I had some thin little jackets that worked in Florida, in Alabama, but definitely not up north, what I consider to be up north, the furthest north I had ever been, but I made it work. So I showed up and every day just in and out of the Pentagon, really learning my job, being aware of my surroundings, and just taking notes. I sat in so many meetings. I took so many notes. And at the time, my role was to sit with all of the subject matter experts. So whether that be on costs, on infrastructure, on whatever it was relating to that particular project, sitting with all of those subject matter experts and really creating idiot-proof slicks and presentations for government senior leaders to understand. And I think what was even wild about this whole experience is that even as idiot-proof as I believe that they were, they still had trouble like understanding key things about processes within our government. So just understanding the inefficiencies kind of from a government standpoint also, helped open up my eyes. I learned how contracts were written, how government funding was awarded, how deals kind of came together, what some of the key and pivotal needs were, especially as it related to like a space perspective, because that's what my job was to tell the government, hey, you got this many buildings. Here's what they're doing. Here's how they're operating. You can, per your space requirements, you don't have to build a new building or tear one down. You can relocate people into this building because there's space, or you could tear it down and build up to this much space. Just kind of advising of how to best manage the overall assets and installations at the various spaces. So this is to where that knowledge really got a chance to build and grow. And I remember just being at, this job over the course of the years, learning and just taking notes, but at the same time, still feeling like I could do more, like I need more, I want more. So in the midst of me having this full-time job at the Pentagon, deciding to say, hey, let me go back to some of those roots and let me get my real estate license here. I know the DMV doesn't have many trailers accessible, but let me try the housing space. Let me see what this looks like part-time. What does exploring real estate look like? It's kind of a side hustle. And that's where the vision for Alluvial began, really as a real estate brokerage. But that's where we began to form, and I began to form the concept of Alluvial and what the next season would mean in business. And even when starting a company, I knew I wanted to build a company And even in the name, I wanted to name a company that was made to serve and really serve some of the most impoverished people. So people of color. I wanted it to be a company built to serve, people of color in all diasporas. I wanted to be Black, but something that was golden, that everyone could be proud of and want to exalt because it poured into them. And that's where the name, alluvial comes from. You have two type of soil composites: alluvial minerals, which are small gold soil composites that are in the water. They've been washed and eroded by water. And then you have eluvial minerals, which are larger deposits. They're like black rocks that you have to basically melt down, and there's that gold once you kind of get to the interior, but they're larger in nature and they sit at the top of mountains. So, I just wanted to really to build something that would also allow other people to build their purposes within a company with purpose, but that was meant to help build and guide others through their purpose, through sustainability, value, faith, and really working in spaces that have been overlooked. So that is where alluvial came into play. And as we enter into this next journey, guys, we have so many things that we plan to do and unfold, and that I'm just so excited to share with you is just how we've expanded over the years, how we've emerged into real estate brokerage and pivoted to construction, to development over time. We'll dive into some of the cool projects we've had a chance to work on. We'll talk about some of the ups. We'll talk about some of the downs. What I want you guys to understand is what this podcast is about. Blueprints and Blessings is a space to remind you that nothing is wasted. Not your detours, not your delays, not your doubts. Every step, every pivot, every moment of uncertainty has the potential to prepare you for exactly what you've been called to build. There is no way God will put a purpose on your heart but not give you the provision. So if you're listening today and you're wondering, how do I start? Where do I start? Just how do I take, some of the knowledge that I've learned to really pull it all together to where it makes sense? I need you to know this. God doesn't need your perfection. He just needs your participation. So bring the obedience. He'll bring the outcome. And I just ask that you guys rock with us and as we continue to grow and explore more about what we're learning and how we can hopefully help you evolve into your purpose. I want to thank you for staying tuned with us. If you've made it this far to the first full episode 1 of the Blueprints and Blessings podcast, the next episode is that we're diving into what it looked like building from ground zero, the highs, the heartbreaks, and how I held on through it all. So until then, stay grounded, stay growing, stay glowing, and remember, the blueprint may not be perfect, but it is yours. So thank you for joining me on Blueprints and Blessings. We look forward to having you guys back.